Sometimes the person sleeping beside you feels miles away. That's what Clara kept thinking every night. The lamp on her bedside table cast a soft glow across the room, highlighting the small distance between her and Richard. Once they couldn't fall asleep without holding hands. Now, silence filled the space where laughter used to live. Richard had spent most of his life building a company and reputation everyone admired. He was calm, respected, and, at least from the outside, content. Clara, meanwhile, had traded her own dreams for his stability. She told herself love was about compromise, but lately it felt more like disappearance. Every morning she made his coffee just the way he liked, strong, no sugar. He'd nod, mumble a thanks, and bury himself in the day's news. She'd watch him, searching for the man who once couldn't stop looking at her. The weight of unspoken words lingered between them, heavier than any argument. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled outside, Richard mentioned his nephew. "Ryan's back in town," he said casually, eyes still on his laptop. "He'll be staying with us a few weeks while he finishes his design project." Clara smiled faintly. "That's nice. It'll be good to have some company around here." He nodded without looking up. She wanted to ask how long a few weeks meant, but didn't. Somewhere along the way, she'd learned not to ask too many questions. When Ryan arrived the next afternoon, the house suddenly felt alive again. His laughter filled the quiet corners. His curiosity warmed the air. He hugged Clara tightly, thanking her for letting him stay. There was something open and sincere in his smile that caught her off guard. Over dinner, Ryan shared stories about his college life, the long nights, the creative chaos of his art studio, the friends who believed in wild ideas. Clara listened, feeling a spark she hadn't felt in years. Even Richard seemed amused for a while, though his attention soon drifted back to his phone. Later that night, as Clara cleared the table, Ryan joined her in the kitchen. "Aunt Clara," he said softly, "you've got this amazing, calm energy." "Uncle Richard's lucky," she laughed lightly. "Calm or boring, depending on who you ask." He shook his head. "No, it's rare. You make a room feel safe." That compliment lingered in her mind long after everyone went to bed. She stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Something in her chest shifted, something she didn't want to name. The next few days brought small, ordinary moments that didn't feel ordinary at all. Ryan would help her in the garden, or sit in the kitchen sketching while she cooked. They'd talk about music, about places they wanted to see someday. It was innocent, easy, but alive. One afternoon, while they were planting herbs together, Ryan brushed soil from her wrist and said, "You still wear that silver bracelet. I remember it from when I was a kid." Clara looked down at it, smiling faintly. "It was a gift from Richard, a long time ago." "Then it's special," Ryan said. "It was," she whispered, before realizing she'd spoken aloud. She quickly changed the subject, pretending not to notice the warmth rising to her face. Yet, that evening, when she caught her reflection in the mirror, she felt different, awake, aware, unsettled. Later, while setting the dinner table, she noticed Richard's seat was empty again. Another late meeting, another excuse. She sighed, staring at the untouched plate. Ryan entered quietly, sleeves rolled up, offering to help. "Uncle working late again?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said, forcing a smile. "He's always busy." Ryan hesitated. "You deserve someone who looks at you the way you look at him." The words hit deeper than she expected. She wanted to reply, to explain that love changes, that life gets complicated, but all she managed was a quiet, "It's not that simple." For the first time in years, Clara felt seen, and that terrified her. That night, she couldn't sleep. She heard the faint sound of Ryan's guitar from the guest room, soft, almost apologetic. Each note carried something unspoken, and her heart echoed in response. She closed her eyes, telling herself it was just loneliness, that she was reading too much into kindness. But deep down, she knew something had already begun to stir between them, something she couldn't ignore forever. And in the faint glow of midnight, with Richard's side of the bed still cold, Clara whispered to herself, "This can't happen, can it?" The following morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, painting the room in a golden glow. Clara was busy preparing breakfast, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mixing with the soft scent of cinnamon toast. The house felt peaceful, almost serene, but the quiet had a weight to it, a weight she couldn't quite place. Ryan appeared at the doorway, hair slightly tousled, wearing a casual shirt and jeans. His presence filled the space effortlessly, and Clara felt her chest tighten in a way that was both exciting and unsettling. "Morning, Clara," he said softly, his voice carrying warmth yet a teasing undertone. "Smells amazing in here. What are you making?" Clara smiled faintly, trying to hide the flutter in her stomach. "Just breakfast. Simple." Before she could move, Ryan stepped closer, lightly resting a hand on her waist. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a shiver up her spine. "Smells delicious," he added, playful yet sincere. She tried to steady her voice. "It's just toast and eggs." "I'll eat whatever you make," he said, eyes lingering on her, scanning every subtle movement. There was an intensity there, one that made her pulse quicken without warning. They sat down at the table, the space between them smaller than usual. Conversation flowed easily, yet beneath it lay a current of something deeper, something neither of them dared to name aloud. Ryan's usual light-hearted charm carried an undercurrent of intent, and Clara could feel it brushing against the edges of her carefully maintained composure. "You know, Clara," Ryan said casually, leaning back slightly, "you have this presence. It's impossible not to notice." Clara laughed softly, a blush rising to her cheeks. "Ryan, you shouldn't say things like that." "I'm not exaggerating," he replied smoothly, gaze fixed on her. "If I were in Richard's place, I wouldn't leave you alone for a second." Her fork trembled slightly in her hand. Desperate to shift the energy, she stood quickly and began clearing the plates. Ryan watched her, the intensity in his eyes refusing to waver. "We should celebrate," he said suddenly, breaking the tension. "Uncle told me you might get the house. It would be a shame not to mark it." Clara hesitated. "It's not finalized yet." "Then tonight, just the two of us," Ryan said firmly, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "Dress up. Something nice. We'll take pictures and send them to Uncle. He won't come back until it's done. We've already started celebrating." Her heart raced, uncertainty swirling inside her. "I don't want to disappoint you." "Don't hesitate," he said softly, leaning closer. "You're young, still incredible. Wear one of your old dresses from your youth. I'm curious to see how you'd look." Clara paused, feeling the pull of something she hadn't acknowledged in years. Despite the unease, the sincerity in his voice made her want to trust him. She nodded, a small smile forming. "All right, we'll see tonight." After breakfast, Clara set about preparing Ryan's favorite dishes: chicken curry, creamy pasta, fresh herb salad, and garlic bread on the side. Each stir of the pot, each careful sprinkle of herbs, felt charged with a new purpose. When she finally chose a green dress from her wardrobe, one she hadn't worn in years, she felt a strange mix of excitement and boldness. The fabric hugged her in all the right ways, reminding her of a younger self she thought she'd long forgotten. Downstairs, Ryan was waiting in the living room, wearing a crisp white shirt. His gaze lingered on her the moment she appeared, and she could feel the warmth creeping across her cheeks. "That dress looks amazing on you," he said, admiration evident in his voice. Clara's heart thudded. "Thank you, you look quite sharp yourself," she replied, managing a small nervous laugh. Dinner that night was warm and intimate. Ryan's charm and wit made conversation effortless, yet Clara couldn't ignore the intensity in his gaze. Every glance, every subtle smile felt layered with meaning. She tried to focus on the food, but the air between them crackled in a way she couldn't dismiss. After a while, he leaned in, lowering his voice slightly. "Thank you for tonight, Clara. Everything is amazing. But I think it could be even better." Her pulse quickened. There was a longing in his eyes she couldn't name, a desire that mirrored the stirrings in her own chest. She swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Let's call Uncle," Ryan suggested suddenly, pulling out his phone. He positioned himself behind her chair, hands resting lightly on her shoulders. The warmth of his touch made her shiver, sending a thrill through her body. When Richard's face appeared on the screen, Ryan's cheerful voice announced their celebration, camera angled to show the dinner table and Clara beside it. Every word, every movement of his hands felt deliberate, gentle, bold, intoxicating. Clara's mind raced. She had spent years feeling unseen, and now, in these simple moments with Ryan, she felt every emotion she had suppressed for so long awaken inside her. His attention was effortless yet magnetic, and for the first time in years, she felt alive. That night, as the soft strains of a romantic song filled the room, Ryan turned toward her, calm, yet purposeful. He extended his hand, eyes locked on hers. "Clara, would you dance with me?" Her heart hammered. This was unexpected, terrifying, irresistible. For a moment, everything else fell away. The quiet house, Richard's absence, the rules she had built around her heart. All that mattered was the warmth of his hand in hers and the spark it ignited. And as the music enveloped them, Clara realized one undeniable truth. This evening would change everything. The soft glow of the candles cast flickering shadows across the living room, dancing along with the gentle music Ryan had put on. Clara hesitated for a moment, staring at his outstretched hand. Her mind raced, filled with caution and desire in equal measure. Yet the pull she felt toward him was impossible to ignore. Slowly, she placed her hand in his, and a spark ignited, a warmth that traveled up her arm and settled deep within her chest. Ryan guided her to the center of the room, one hand resting lightly on her waist, the other holding hers. The movement was fluid, almost hypnotic, as if they had practiced this dance for years, in dreams no one had remembered. "Just a dance," Ryan whispered, his voice low, intimate. "We deserve a little fun tonight." Her heartbeat thrummed in her ears. She nodded, barely trusting herself to speak. Every step they took together seemed to erase the space between them, erasing years of restraint, leaving only this charged moment. As the music continued, Ryan leaned closer. His breath brushed against her neck, sending shivers down her spine. Clara's thoughts swirled, memories of a life restrained by routine, of silent dinners, of a marriage filled with invisible walls. And now here was Ryan, warm, bold, and intensely present. "You feel different," she murmured, her voice trembling. "I can't." Ryan's eyes held hers, steady and unwavering. "You're not imagining this," he said softly. "It's real. It's us right now." Time seemed to stretch. The world outside the house, the distant hum of traffic, the shadows cast by the passing storm, faded into nothing. All that existed was the closeness of his body, the heat of his gaze, the brush of their hands. Clara felt a rush of emotions she had spent years suppressing: excitement, fear, longing, and a wild, untamed desire. Ryan tilted his head slightly, studying her expression. "Clara, do you feel it too?" She swallowed, her voice barely audible. "Yes, I do." A small, almost mischievous smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "Then don't fight it," he murmured. The warmth in his eyes deepened, the intensity unspoken yet undeniable. He guided her gently, yet every movement carried a silent promise, an unspoken daring to explore the unknown. Clara's pulse quickened. She felt a strange mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. Her hands instinctively rested on his shoulders, leaning into the warmth and strength that radiated from him. With each turn, each step, she felt herself unraveling, letting go of the careful restraint she had carried for so long. The music shifted, slower now, more intimate. Ryan's hands tightened lightly on her waist, his gaze never breaking contact with hers. Clara felt her cheeks flush, her breath catching in her throat. Every nerve in her body seemed alive, tingling with anticipation and curiosity. "You're mesmerizing," Ryan whispered, voice low and husky. "I can see everything you've hidden, everything you've kept inside." Clara's stomach fluttered. The words struck deep, cutting through the careful wall she had built around her heart. She felt exposed, yet strangely safe. "Ryan, She couldn't finish. He leaned in slightly, just close enough for her to feel the warmth of his lips brushing against hers without actually touching. The tension between them was almost unbearable, an electric charge that made it impossible to think clearly. "This isn't just a dance," he murmured, voice soft but firm. "It's a beginning, something you've wanted without realizing it." Clara's heart raced. She knew he was right. Every suppressed feeling, every quiet longing, every lonely moment of the past months had led to this. And yet, fear whispered caution, reminding her of boundaries, of consequences. But the intensity of the moment, the pull, the heat, the undeniable connection, was impossible to resist. As they swayed together, time felt suspended. The candlelight shimmered across their faces, highlighting the flush of her cheeks and the determination in his eyes. Clara's mind blurred, her thoughts lost in the warmth, the closeness, and the thrilling, forbidden energy that pulsed between them. When the song ended, Ryan didn't release her. He held her close, letting the silence speak louder than any words could. Clara felt a shiver run through her, a combination of anticipation and surrender. "This is dangerous," she whispered, almost to herself. Ryan's smile was gentle yet full of promise. "Perhaps," he said softly, "but sometimes the moments worth remembering are the ones that scare us the most." Clara closed her eyes, taking a slow breath. The world outside could wait. Tonight, there was only this: the heat, the closeness, the quiet intensity that left her heart pounding. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning, because with Ryan, everything felt possible. The evening had settled into a calm hush, the soft glow of the candles still flickering across the room. Clara's heart hadn't slowed since their dance. The sensation of Ryan's hands on her waist, the warmth of his body close to hers, lingered in every nerve. She tried to steady herself, but the quiet thrum of excitement in her chest refused to fade. Ryan leaned back slightly, studying her. "Clara, can I be honest with you?" His voice was low, deliberate, almost reverent. Clara nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight. Every fiber of her being was alert, caught in the intensity of the moment. "I like you," he said softly, almost a whisper. Yet his words cut through her like sunlight piercing clouds. "More than I should, maybe, but I can't keep pretending I don't." Her breath hitched. The confession was unexpected, yet in a strange way, inevitable. She had felt it growing between them. That quiet pull that had started the moment he arrived. But hearing it aloud, so deliberate, so real, made her heart shiver. "Ryan," she murmured, voice trembling. It's complicated. "Richard, I know," he interrupted gently, holding her gaze. "I know you're married. I'm not asking you to make a choice now. I just need you to know the truth. What I feel isn't fleeting. And neither is this moment." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to look away, to retreat to safety, but she couldn't. Something inside her had awakened, a longing she had buried under routine and obligation. For hours they sat together in quiet conversation, sharing pieces of themselves that hadn't been spoken aloud for years. Ryan spoke of dreams, of art, of emotions he rarely let anyone see, and Clara, for the first time in years, allowed herself to be completely honest, without pretense, without fear. The room felt smaller, cozier. The world outside reduced to nothing. Every glance, every gentle touch, every shared smile carried the weight of unspoken desire and fragile trust. Finally, Ryan moved closer, his hand brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Clara, you deserve to feel alive," he said softly. "To be seen, to be wanted, and I want to be the one who gives you that, even if just for a moment." Her chest heaved. The words weren't just enticing. They were a mirror of everything she had been craving, everything she had thought she'd lost. For years she had been invisible to the man she loved, and now, in Ryan's presence, she felt seen. "Truly seen, she began, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply leaned closer, her hand resting lightly on his. Their fingers intertwined naturally, almost instinctively, and Clara felt a rush of warmth flood through her entire body. Ryan's smile softened. "Shh," he whispered. No need for words right now. Just feel, and feel she did. Every heartbeat, every breath, every shiver of anticipation was magnified in the quiet intimacy of the room. It was dangerous, yes. Forbidden, yes. But in that instant, it felt inevitable, natural, like gravity itself had shifted to draw them together. Hours passed in a haze of soft laughter, lingering touches and stolen glances. The night deepened, and yet neither wanted it to end. Clara found herself drawn to Ryan in ways she hadn't anticipated, her mind spinning with the thrill of defiance, the pull of desire, and the bittersweet ache of secrecy. Finally, Ryan's eyes softened, and he brushed a fingertip along her cheek. "Clara, promise me something," he murmured. "Anything," she replied, breathless. "Promise me you won't ignore this feeling," he said, his gaze intense. "Even if you have to be careful, even if you have to hide it, don't bury it again. You've kept so much inside, and I can't let that happen anymore." Clara's lips trembled. She nodded slowly, committing the promise silently. Somewhere deep inside, she knew she couldn't turn back. Not from the feelings stirring in her. Not from the intensity of the night. Not from Ryan. And as the candles flickered their final golden glow, Clara realized one undeniable truth. She was no longer the same woman who had welcomed him into the house just days ago. Something inside her had shifted irrevocably, opening doors she hadn't dared to unlock for years. The danger, the thrill, the intensity, it was intoxicating. And she wanted more. In that quiet, dimly lit room, with Ryan so near, Clara finally understood what she had been missing: attention, desire, and the feeling of being truly alive. Little did she know, the next 2 days would bring challenges, confessions, and temptations that would test every boundary she had ever set. And yet, she didn't want to resist. The following morning, the house felt alive in a new way. The previous night had changed everything. Clara woke to sunlight filtering softly through the curtains, warmth brushing her skin as she stretched and took a deep breath. Ryan was still asleep in the guest room, and for a moment, she allowed herself to savor the quiet aftermath, the tension, the thrill, the undeniable connection that had taken root between them. As she moved through the house preparing breakfast, Clara felt a strange energy coursing through her. Every step, every glance toward the empty space where Ryan would soon appear was charged. She couldn't help but think back to the confessions, the closeness, the way his hands had made her heart race. The memory was intoxicating, but also terrifying. Ryan emerged from the stairs shortly after, casually dressed, but with that familiar spark in his eyes that made her pulse quicken. "Good morning," he said softly, voice teasing but warm. "Sleep well?" Clara smiled faintly. "Surprisingly," she replied. "You?" "Like a rock," he said with a grin, his gaze lingering on her just a second too long. The air between them buzzed with unspoken anticipation. Over breakfast, their conversation was easy, playful, but beneath it simmered the tension of the previous night. Every laugh, every shared glance carried an invisible charge, reminding Clara of the intensity she had allowed herself to feel. She found herself glancing at him more than usual, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the effortless charm in his manner, the warmth he radiated. Later, as they moved about the house together, organizing papers, tending to small chores, Ryan would occasionally brush against her hand, linger a moment too long when passing close, or offer a quick, subtle compliment. Each gesture was innocent in appearance, yet ignited a storm within her. Clara realized she had been starved for this kind of attention for far too long. The day passed in a blur of ordinary tasks made extraordinary by their proximity. When evening came, the soft golden light of sunset filtered through the windows, casting shadows that danced along the walls. Ryan suggested they take a walk in the garden. Clara followed, a mix of excitement and apprehension bubbling inside her. In the garden, Ryan stopped and turned to her. "Clara, I know this is complicated, and I don't want to cause problems," he said softly, his hand brushing hers in a deliberate, intimate gesture. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this. Every moment with you, it's impossible to ignore. Her breath caught. She had been trying to rationalize, to contain her feelings, but his words shattered the walls she had so carefully built. "Ryan, this is so wrong," she murmured, but the tremble in her voice betrayed her desire. "Maybe," he said gently, voice low and persuasive, "but sometimes what feels wrong is exactly what we need to feel alive. You deserve this, us, if only for these moments." And in that garden, under the soft glow of twilight, Clara felt herself giving in, allowing the pull of desire and longing to take control. Ryan stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers with intensity and sincerity. She leaned in slightly, drawn by an irresistible force she could no longer deny. The world around them faded. The distant sounds of traffic, the quiet hum of the house, even Richard's presence somewhere far away. All became inconsequential. There was only Ryan, only the intensity, only the fire between them. As their lips met in a tender yet consuming kiss, Clara felt every suppressed feeling, every lonely moment, every desire she had buried for years explode inside her. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, more urgent, as if it had been waiting years for release. Her hands instinctively found his shoulders, pulling him closer, as if letting go was the only way to truly feel alive again. Time seemed suspended, yet the night stretched on, filled with whispered words, stolen touches, and the intimacy of two souls exploring a connection that had been denied for far too long. Clara realized she was no longer thinking of consequences, only the raw, exhilarating reality of the moment. When at last they separated slightly, their foreheads resting against each other, Clara's chest heaved, and her eyes shone with a mixture of desire and newfound clarity. "Ryan, I can't believe this," she whispered. "I can," he replied, voice low and certain. "Because it's real. Because I can see it in you. The part of you that's alive, awake, and not afraid to feel again." For the remaining 2 days, their connection deepened. They shared quiet meals, lingering touches, whispered conversations that revealed hidden dreams and desires, and moments that made every heartbeat feel amplified. Clara discovered the intensity of being seen, truly appreciated, and wanted in a way she had forgotten was possible. By the time Richard returned, the house had changed. Clara felt different, aware of her own desires, her own vitality, and the strength that came from allowing herself to feel again. Ryan's presence had stirred something undeniable, something she could no longer ignore. As she watched him carry his bags upstairs, she whispered to herself, "Nothing will ever be the same." And she was right. The experience had awakened her, reminded her of her own needs, her own desires, and the thrill of connection. It wasn't just about Ryan. It was about reclaiming herself, embracing what she had denied, and stepping into a world where she could feel fully alive again. Because life had a strange way of showing us exactly what we needed, often when we least expected it. And Clara now knew, with every fiber of her being, that some moments, though they seemed ordinary at first, were the very beginning of everything.